Thanks for coming today. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the Office of the Statewide Prosecutor, and the Plant City Police Department are here today to announce the results of a 10-month-long investigation called Operation Red Dawn. Here to speak today is Colonel Donna Lazinski from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. We also have the Attorney General Pam Bondi will also speak. And also with us, Captain Jerry Swan from the Plant City Police Department and Dan Weissman from the Statewide Prosecutor's Office. Colonel?
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for coming here today, and particularly the Attorney General for taking time out of her busy day. In May and June of 2012, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office noticed a significant increase in gang-related violence in the eastern portion of our county. Most concerning to us was a series of drive-by shootings in which one subject was shot and wounded and survived. That subject was a gang member, and we expected that other gang members were involved in that situation. It was at this time Sheriff G decided it was time to send another strong message out to these gang members and stop the storm of violence that they were creating. The sheriff has always made it a priority that we would not allow these gangs to gain a foothold in our community so that we don't have the problems some of the big cities face. And one of the steps to prevent this was to focus on the Norteños. Detectives were tasked with looking at the possibility of conducting a Rico racketeering investigation into their activities. It was also at this time that we enlisted the assistance of the statewide prosecutor from the Attorney General's office and the Plant City Police Department. Plant City was having the same problems with these individuals who are creating havoc in our communities. And just a little background on our local Norteños. They also go by Norte 14, and they're based on the criminal street gang from California. They identify themselves with the color red and the number 14. And in some of the pictures you'll see here some of the gang signs, how they identify themselves. And typically, and generally speaking, the rival gang to the Norteños is the Serenos, or Sur 13, and they identify themselves with the color blue and the number 13. During the course of this investigation, which required extensive manpower by all involved, numerous Norteño gang members and associates were identified within Hillsborough County. However, they were also linked to crimes in Polk, Pasco, and Manatee. A detailed review of the existing historical cases involving these subjects was conducted, which included predicate criminal acts such as homicides, robberies, aggravated batteries, narcotics trafficking, and criminal mischief involving graffiti. Additional investigative techniques were also used to ensure these subjects were involved in active criminal activity in furtherance of those gangs. And as a result, 11 key gang members, ages 17 to 27, were indicted and charged with Rico, racketeering again. These individuals you see here, we've been out to arresting today, or some of them have already been in custody, are the worst of the worst. Today our streets are much safer with these subjects off of them. This is just another step Sheriff David G. and our law enforcement partners are taking in targeting these criminal gangs and their violent acts. Last time it was the Hot Boys, in which 10 subjects were indicted and sentenced to a total of 119 years. And this time it's the Norteños, and I can assure you it won't be the last group we're focusing on. Again, this wouldn't have been successful without the hard work of our detectives in the Special Investigations Division, District 2, the Plant City Police Department, the Attorney General, Ms. Bondi, and the statewide prosecutor. And also the members of our community who have stood up to these individuals and decided it was time to fight back.
Get up here with me. Come on.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all so much, and I cannot thank Sheriff David G. and all of the great deputies. I mean, Sheriff G has been relentless in his fight against gangs in our community, and we should be so proud that he is our sheriff. And thank you so much to the Plant City Police Department for all your hard work in this case, and also to Mark Ober for cross-designating Dan Weissman, my statewide prosecutor. Get over here. For his hard work. Look how tired he is. This guy has been working tirelessly for 10 months. I was sitting in his office a few months ago, and I couldn't even look around the walls because it was covered with this case. These are very, very complex cases. Dan prosecuted the Hot Boys, and he is committed, we are committed, to getting these violent gangs off of our streets. What you have to understand, look, the youngest gang member here is 17 years old. And I mean, these are violent people. You heard the predicate acts. They're charged with racketeering. They're all looking at a minimum of 30 years in Florida State Prison. And I can tell you, I mean, look at the predicate acts. Homicide, firearms, drug dealing, aggravated batteries. They are the worst of the worst, and they are now off of our streets thanks to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, thanks to Plant City, and thanks to my statewide prosecutor, who I don't think has slept in the last year. But we are committed to keeping these guys locked up. And here's why it's so important. These gang members go out, look at their pictures. They're relatively young. They go out and they recruit our innocent kids. They recruit kids into gang members, especially kids from broken homes, because they tell them they're going to give them a sense of a family, joining a family. And that's not what joining a gang is all about. It's about becoming a violent criminal. And we're just here today to thank law enforcement for their hard work, and Dan for everything you do and continue to do. And you need to get some sleep. And thank you all so much, and we're just so proud, and we can't wait for this to go through the system. And again, thanks to Mark Ober for cross-designating my statewide prosecutor, because when something crosses county lines, and in this case it involved Hillsborough County, a bit in Polk County, Plant City, so my office will be handling the case thanks to Mr. Ober and the great teamwork by all of these agencies working together. And I can tell you I'm all over the state, and what we do best in Tampa Bay, and I'm very proud to be from Tampa Bay, is work together. Thank you all so much.
Do you want to add anything?
No.
Any questions?
I have a question for Dan. Before the colonel said that there was a shooting, the guy survived, did you get a lot of information from him that started the information flow so you could do what you've done?
I think that the sources of information that come together to build the foundation for a case like this are from more places than that. These cases are built from not just the testimony of people, not just the statements of people, but also usually a very disturbing pattern of violent crime which has manifested itself, over time to society's detriment, as a result of, the unfortunate gang activity that we're seeing here.
So you take these guys off the street, what does that mean to gang activity in eastern Hillsborough County and beyond? How much good does it do?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have been able to work with some of the best law enforcement agencies in the state. And I can tell you from my personal experience, after arrest operations like the ones that was carried out today, I have had agencies call me and say, citizens have called us and said, this is the first time I've been able to have a Memorial Day barbecue in years. Thanks. And that kind of stuff is really powerful for us, and it keeps us going.
And these are the key members of those groups. So they're the ones that influence the other gang members and direct them what to do. And without them out of the picture, these groups are not able to function as well.
From the 11 suspects, which one would you say was like maybe the leader of them all?
Well, that's an ongoing question, and due to the fluid nature of how this all operates, in gang activity these days, it's more often the case that the person who is the leader is the one who's exhibiting the strongest, boldest, most aggressive personality on a day-to-day basis, which is kind of one of those things that actually makes that kind of activity even more concerning than the kind of activity you see when there's one person who's structurally in charge who can tell the other guys to cool out when their flagrant, violent acts, threaten bringing the attention of law enforcement.
And that's why Dan's office looked like a war room, literally, in more ways than one, because you have to get to the bottom of that. And I think it's psychological as well, getting to the heart of who the leader is. But this is now a pending criminal case, so we're limited on what we can say. But that's an important question, because that goes into it. And these are the leaders, and they're very frightening individuals, and they go out and recruit younger kids, and that's what parents need to know, to talk to their kids about gangs. Talk to their kids about, this isn't a group, this isn't a club, this isn't a fraternity. They need to stay away from these people.
Can any of you all speak to the specific work that the detectives had to do, the danger of it, or anything that they had to negotiate as a part of this investigation?
Part of this investigation was historical in nature, where we look at their past histories and put that all together. But at times there are undercover operations where it could be either narcotics or doing surveillance on those. And just due to the history of these subjects, the danger is always there. They could get discovered that they're working undercover, or during the course of surveillance come across these individuals, and they're not hesitant. Many of these people have resisted law enforcement in the past. So it would not be unexpected that they could do this in the future, especially knowing that they're looking at more serious charges. So it's a very big concern for us.
From directly behind the microphones, can you take us and give us a word picture of from day one where you said, hey, here's the first thing on our board to the moment that we're standing here. Can you take us on a word picture of that?
Basically, when we first noticed this trend occurring, we attacked it from a couple different avenues. We had our patrol and our street crime units step up their presence in those areas to stop the immediate violence that was going on. But we realized it was a much more deep-rooted problem, and that we needed the assistance of some stricter laws and work with the statewide prosecutor on getting long-term prison sentences for these individuals. Again, it was a review of a lot of their past histories, continuing to see what they're doing in the future and where they were going. So it's a complex investigation, and it's hard to sum it up in a short few words.
While you're pleased with what you've accomplished today, and I'm not putting any negative light on that part of it, but from this moment forward, typically from your experience, how long does it take for these sorts of groups who are still out there on the street to reorganize?
It depends. We've seen in the last group we took off, we didn't really see them reorganize. Now it's possible another group can come in their place, and that's why we got to keep moving forward. And this was a fantastic operation, and we did a great job, but it's never going to stop. And we need to keep sending that message that we're going to stay on top of these guys, and they can move around and form different groups, because a lot of the people we deal with, we call them gangs, but by the true sense of the word, they're not. They're just groups of people who are committing a crime here and there. And we've just got to make sure we're identifying the right and truly violent groups and focus on that.
Are there any more pending arrests for this?
Currently, this is very active. We anticipate getting some additional information from our arrests and some search warrants that are being executed, so it is possible.
And did you say how you thought of the name Operation Red Dawn? Did you already explain that? I didn't hear you if you did.
No.
What does that mean?
Red is the color for the group, so that was the focus of
Dawn?
time of dawn. We're going to go find them and put them in jail.
Or maybe earlier.
Can you talk about what you see from these gangs?
Right now, we're still in the process of executing some of these search warrants, and I'm not out there, so I don't know, to tell you the truth.
How big is
This gang, it's very hard. These numbers are fluid. Sometimes people get sworn and jumped into a gang right away. Others die off. Others move out of town. So it's a very fluid number, but we believe there to be over 100. And we focused on targeting the worst of the worst and their infrastructure, so that we could work out from there.
over 100 in eastern Hillsborough?
Within Hillsborough County.
In the east, this is within-
Primarily.
What about the Sioux? And are they? There's a rival. Are they going to?
The SIRS, we believe them to be the same numbers, over 100.
Any sub-gangs or women's groups, family gangs, part of this group here?
Not at this time, not as part of this investigation, but there are usually female groups associated with some of these gangs.
This gang is related to another gangs out of the state, like California or Mexico?
That's where they're based on, and there's this particular gang in various states in Mexico, but it was loosely based on the group out of California.
I know you said Hillsborough and parts of Polk, but were there any areas in particular that they were specifically focused in or targeting?
For us, it was eastern Hillsborough County.